Hello, welcome. Jessica Chandler, principal at the Anywhere Elementary. It's great to have
It's
you.
so nice to meet you, Adrian Smith.
Hi, Candace. It's nice to meet
Adrian
you.
Smith, it's very nice to meet you.
I'm the counselor here.
Okay. And
Oh,
should I?
thank you.
My resume?
Oh, yes, thank
Have
you.
a seat.
Okay. Head.
Yes, here. Would you like a water?
Oh, thank you. You know, it's mighty hot here, so I would normally say no, but yes, thank you.
Yes, it is. It's a seasonably warm summer. Well, we are so glad that you agreed to this interview. This is our last opening we have here to fill. And we were looking over your resume and it looks like you have a lot of experience. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
About myself or about my experience?
Tell us about yourself to begin with.
Okay, so I am a mother of two beautiful girls, a wife, and honestly, if I had to describe myself, oh gosh, I'm a casserole.
Okay, could you tell me about that?
I would like to hear the casserole.
Yeah, I'm a casserole, so I would say I'm a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You mix it all together, and that is me. It is multiple things. I'm get my hands dirty in the dirt. I love hard work, but like to have a reason to dress up nice. There's a soft side of me, there's a hard side of me, there's multiple things of me. Might be not the flavor for everybody, but just like a casserole, if you add enough cheese and salsa on it, pretty much anybody will eat it.
Okay, what's your favorite casserole?
Oh, my favorite casserole.
This is a very important question to me. I like casseroles as well.
I make many of them, but probably this newest one that I've been trying is a fajita pasta casserole. It's like Italy and Mexico come together and make a baby, and it's wonderful.
I'm gonna need that recipe.
It changes though.
I
It
do like
changes though.
casserole.
Okay.
All right, I'm sorry. That was an important question for me.
Well, it sounds like you are going to fit right in with our monthly potlucks as well that we have here at Anywhere Elementary. So let's dig in to who you are as a teacher. Would you ask?
Yes, I've got some questions about some of your experience.
Yes, ma'am.
I was hoping that maybe you could share a little bit about your teaching philosophy, like where you've been with that and how you've kind of brought that into your history as a teacher.
Okay, I guess let's even tie it back into the casserole. To me, it comes to the dinner table. To me, it comes to home. I feel that you have to reach the heart of the kid if you're ever going to reach their head. So it's all about foundation and relationships. And I've got to build the trust of my student before they're ever going to be willing to work with me. So my philosophy is creating a culture, a safe environment for learning, and not just culture in the sense of like, oh, this is a learning culture, but like really getting to know each individual and let them get to know me, and let them get to know, just like I am a casserole and I have many sides, each of our students do as well. And often I think we can put a stigma and a stereotype on, you know, Johnny is a good reader. Johnny likes A, B, and C, but maybe he also has other things that he likes or don't like. So big philosophy for me is connecting, teaching from the heart, understanding that all students have a value to learn, even our underdogs. I was an underdog. I wasn't Johnny who could read good. I struggled and still continue to. And it was hard to be able to adapt to just this broken mold of fit in this box. It didn't fit in that box. And so my big philosophy is remember that everyone is different and don't try to fit them into something that they don't belong in. Adapt to where everybody is at.
Is there ever a time that philosophy's failed you?
I'm sure it has. oh, I'm sure failure happens. I strive to always try to do better every day. Like there's times that I think that I might have found a way to like, unlock a box or get a student out of a stuck area. And I've had to change my thinking. I can give you an example of one. I have a nonverbal student. At this point, he's 18 and doesn't actively use his device, his communication device.
Okay.
And so I was wanting to get him to speak. I was wanting to get him to communicate because I thought that that would be what he needed. And a wonderful speech pathologist gave me an insightful revelation of maybe that's not a box that needs to be unlocked.
Very
And
interesting.
At this point,
Because you would feel that that's your job, like that would have been your job, but it
I thought
could have been baby steps.
I thought that it would be helpful, but I need to, even in that like you've got to respect each individual at where they're at and what they're able to do. And maybe what they're supposed to do. So sometimes what we measure as success, those are our goals. So again, to respect, he has a voice, it just looks different. It looks in pointing, it looks in different measures.
That's good. So thinking about that and what you bring as a special education teacher, where you're actually creating goals for those learners, and you have a goal that may be here and it may not match up where that learner is. Can you tell us about how that has helped you in preparing goals for your students?
That is such, to be very honest with you, that's a difficult thing, making realistic goals, attainable goals, especially as a special ed teacher. I think that often there is this pressure of making a goal that they can master, because it looks like failure if the student doesn't master. It looks like failure on me. So,
and I imagine it's very individualistic as well.
Absolutely. And so what I try to do, how I do it, for me personally, is I'm willing to take a slap on the hand and say, did not meet mastery. And is that what we want? No. That means that if they didn't meet mastery, that means that I wrote an unrealistic goal, and I need to tailor that differently. So for the following IUP year, we would say we're continuing, and we're going to put other steps in place so that they are showing mastery. We're not going to just slap an M on there so that I look like I'm doing my job. If they have not mastered the goal, we will not show mastery.
I appreciate that honesty. Okay, did you have another follow-up question?
Well, so if I could ask, if you could maybe give me an example of how you might handle certain misbehaviors. So let's say a child would show up in the morning, they seem angry, and you're noticing that this child is angry. So you go to engage with a student, and they happen to start cursing you out, where they're aggressive. How would you respond to that kind of situation where they're showing some assertion that maybe you weren't prepared for that morning?
Pardon my laughter.
Like, been there, done that?
Yes, ma'am. So, I have a couple of different students, but okay, how would I handle it? I guess first off, we need to think of the student as an individual. First question would be, is this a student with a bit? Do we have a behavior issue? Is this a gen ed student, or is this a student within my population in my classroom? And I'll be honest, even if it is a gen ed student, I know this is unconventional, but that's not a hill I'm gonna die on. Do any of us have language that comes out of our mouth at times that we would regret? Do words come out of my mouth? Am I talking to you in language that I would if I was sitting at a table with friends. No, this is very formal. You might hear different language in a different setting. I feel that there needs to be grace given for the situation. And if I already recognize that that kid's having a hard time, if I have done my job of originally, like I said, with my philosophy, if I have done my job and I've made a heart connection with that kid, that student is gonna be able to get up with me and I'll be like, hey, what's up? What's going on? And we're gonna be real casual.
I think that makes a big difference, especially if it's one you've already established a relationship with, and.
So we're gonna go for a walk. Is how we, first off, I'm gonna offer, you wanna step out? You wanna go for a walk? Do you need a drink of water? You might need some alone time. You might not want buddy shoulder time with me. If you're that angry and you're speaking to me that way, you might need to take notice, take a step back. Obviously, big first thing would be don't go in their strike zone. I'm thinking of safety. If somebody is keyed up and agitated to that point, you need to be mindful of safety first. And then offer those exit solutions, but respect their no. Like, don't be pushy. If they say no, then you respect that. And often they come down on their own. And then they're ready to go for that walk. So you leave them be. Silence is a beautiful thing. Shutdown, I can do a shutdown all day long. Just don't tear up my room, please. Because I worked a long time on that little bulletin board. That, you
It
know,
sounds like you've had some experience with this in the past, that.
so typically they'll come back. Quiet time, shutdown time is good. And then when you go on that walk, you lead it, but like, you seemed upset. Hey, what's going on? How was your morning? How was your evening? And then you'll find most times, I'm not saying every time, most times you will find that even with our ID, even with behavior issues, our students, they have a voice and they want to express it. And even with our nonverbal students, it just looks different with that.
Yeah,
That looks more like, let me give you something to comfort you.
yeah.
So hope that rambling explanation.
No, I definitely, and it certainly sounds like
I just don't, it
you
would
know how
not,
to handle yourself in the situation.
it just wouldn't be something that I would call in for help on.
We can hope it doesn't happen at all.
So that's interesting because the first scenario you shared was about a nonverbal child and recognizing that might not be the goal that that child needs of becoming communicative. And then the question that Candace asked you about.
Maybe a bit too verbal.
Yes, and how you are able to meet all those needs in between, which really leads me to what I would like to hear about next. And I think you've spoken on that some, but tell us a little more about differentiation. How do you carry about differentiation in your classroom?
So that's daily. It reminds me of like I had a vision of an early elementary book that I was read to, of the man with the plates, and they would stack the plates, and like, you know, one more would go on top of the other. So it's like you've got these spinning plates and more is being stacked on, and you try to balance it. Sometimes you balance it well, and sometimes the wrong move and those plates can all come crashing together. It truly is having to meet the needs of each individual, trying to do it simultaneously. And I like to have whole group lessons, but chunk it small, and for short bits. So something that I have a good hook on that's going to catch their attention. Buy-in to me is very important. Buy-in of the students. They get to help kind of have a voting system of what would today's science lesson look like. I mean, ahead of time. Lesson plans look different because you have to be willing to toss it out at the whim if it's not working. And that can be tough.
Oh, especially in your environment, I think.
Yeah.
I think everything can change in a day. You might have all of the plans.
In a moment, and those plans, I have to be willing to say, like, okay, this plan went awry, and back up and punt, try it again, or I may never get to use that lesson, and that's got to be okay. I have one student that cannot handle the full, even if it's 10 minutes whole group, 15 minutes whole group. He will come with us as long as he can, and then I'm working towards, so if we have a token system that once he meets it, he gets to choose what his reward time is gonna be, and it may be just, I wanna look out the window for 5 minutes. So trying to meet the needs of where they're at, engaging him, if I know that if it's a science lesson about the water cycle or something like that, I would have pre-printed pictures ahead of time that he could show of, like, you know, when the time is, like, and sometimes his motivation is more, for wanting his break and his reward, but either way, so.
Well, that being said, I mean, because I've seen that you've worked with a few age groups, would you have a favorite of where it all kind of came together for you? Would you say that in your experience so far, where you've hit like the magic age range for you?
Cause this is gonna be a big jump going from secondary down to this elementary position.
So, you know, it's kind of crazy. I would have honestly, I didn't see myself in education to begin with. My plan was to become a nurse. And God had a different plan, is my belief. And I took a semester off of college to sub at the elementary level, and self-contained life skills classroom is where I began, and it became pretty full-time quickly. And so I began at the elementary, but as a substitute and without like the expertise. I didn't have background knowledge yet. I just had the heart for it, but didn't know how to be an instructor yet. So once it was time for me to go to school, I went to middle school and became, I was a paraprofessional inclusion support, primarily with ID students and students on the spectrum of varying levels, while I was pursuing my degree in education. I have worked in gen ed and special ed, but the primary part of my time as an educator has been in high school in the special ed setting. I have gained so much experience during this time, but I really feel like my students have taught me more than I could ever teach them. Educators, you know, we all say we're lifelong learners, and I feel like I'm a daily learner from them, and I'm learning how to overcome and how to do things different. And I see so many things that we could have done different at the lower level. Issues that I'm seeing now at a higher level.
I think that gives great perspective.
So
I think it's great seeing kind of this back end and you know, knowing maybe what could have been in place from a primary age before, you know, before they reach maybe some of these hurdles that they're.
and I'm not saying that it's intentional, because as educators, we're doing the best that we can. We're in the trenches, you know, sometimes it's straight survival. But there are things that I saw as reward systems, even just as a substitute, that I didn't know would be, I didn't know that they would be negative and adversely affect the student, but now in hindsight, I can see. For example, a child that really likes the texture of someone's hair, and he would enjoy petting the para's hair at the end of a reading time. Behavior that is cute at 5 is not as cute when that now same child, because I stayed in the same district, that same child wants to come back at 2:10 and he's 6'2" and wants to pet my hair. How do we implement boundaries that should have been established in the beginning?
Interesting, yeah, that's a great point.
So to answer a sweet spot, I don't know. I love all ages. I feel like all groups deserve a learning opportunity. So really where my heart is I feel that I need to go down before I can go back up and to one day be able to help train other special education teachers like myself and kind of be able to give the panoramic picture of this is our starting point, but this is our stopping point, and we've got to change our thinking. We've got to train them while they're little, you know, raise them up in the right ways with the right behavior modeling, so that when they do become 6'2" and 280, I'm not in a power struggle with you.
That's great.
Because I have to recognize, you know, at 5'4", I think that I'm Mighty Mouse. But the bottom line is that's where the de-escalation really has to come into play, because, you know, even trained in the best way to properly do your safety secure holds, you can do that very effectively at elementary and moderately effectively at middle school. Once we get to the high school level, unless it is imminent danger, in my mind, I think I can hold you, but in reality, we know that we cannot. And so that's where like the behavior training and modeling has to come into place, so that we don't have to get to that point.
Well, you brought up a lot of good points about managing your classroom and managing those students, you know, and I know, it's so important, like you share, that we connect with the students and we connect with them by building relationships. So thinking of our schoolhouse here at Anywhere Elementary as a community outside of just that classroom that you are in charge of, could you tell us about how you keep yourself from being a silo in your own classroom? How do you connect with other educators?
Well, to be honest, in special education, it can often feel like you are in this little island all by yourself. Because your world is so different. You know, you go into the break room and you won't hear teachers complaining about children not studying for a test, or the difficulties that they are struggling with.
Or even because they have the same students.
Possibly,
You know, where, you know,
absolutely.
teachers might kind of compare notes on struggles that they might be having with the same students, but you wouldn't have as many crossover students with other teachers that way.
Or it can be presented in a way that it's my students instead of our students, even when there's a crossover. And so that has been a struggle. That has been an area that we have hit my students. No, it's our. And it took a bit of a shift because the culture was not accepting of my population when I first got there. But I'm a kind of in your face, Southern smile, bless your heart, here we go, and how are you? And I'm gonna kill you with kindness, and you're going to learn with exposure. And people often, it's out of ignorance. They don't mean they don't mean to be malicious towards my population. So if we want to get personal with it, then it's mine. They're my students. And we will attend the pep rally. And here's what I need to do so. I'm gonna meet with the cheer coach ahead of time, and I need these 2 rows saved because we need a quick exit. But we're gonna be front and center. We're gonna be in the middle. We're gonna come with our headphones, and I'm gonna need to know if there's flashing lights, because I have one student that has seizures. And so if there are flashing lights, we're gonna need to go ahead and you advocate.
So it's bringing people into your community as well.
Our community. And then that's how we create a community, is you educate them. And then I didn't know that flashing lights could cause that. Yeah. Well, the bong, bong, bong of the drum really bothers him. How about he comes over and checks it out ahead of time? Now that gets band people a little weird. They're not a big fan of that, but once you explain, can I touch? Can I hear it? Can I feel it? And when they see the expression change, it changes culture.
And I think that is amazing in this the community of students as well. It's not just even among the teachers at that point. It's integrating.
The students has
Throughout.
been the better part, and we did integrated athletics, which is kind of like Special Olympics, but you don't have to follow underneath the same laws like UIL.
Right.
But we did a buddy system where we paired each special athlete with a gen ed athlete. Our gen ed athletes gained more from that experience and spoke at the school board meeting of how empowering it was.
Oh, that's wonderful. Were you involved in that with, pairing up and helping them?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So it was a big undertaking to help coordinate, but we did, for them to get to see, for our relay runners to get to see a blind student running, with a rope, with a baton that is on it so that she could trail and follow with a lead on the other end. And they said, we're the same kind of different. We're all running blind, but she did it in a different manner, in a different fashion. So, I think really the biggest part of culture is exposure. And also for those of us that have a heart for special education is it's easy to become judgmental of somebody that doesn't understand my world, that I have to pause and be willing to show them the lens differently in a loving manner, or it's never going to change.
No, that's great. We're very well put.
So good. Well, that sounds like you have had a lot of success in many different areas. So it sounds like this could be an area that we still need to support you in helping to bridge that gap so that you do not feel isolated and you change from it being my students to being our students. And I know Candace is very passionate about building that community here in Anywhere Elementary, and she will be a great support for you, along with our other SPED staff that we already have in place. We have a great team of paraprofessionals who served under a special education teacher who'd been here a number of years, who just retired, and you would be stepping into her position. So could you tell us what a typical day in your classroom might look like? Thinking about some of those pivoting times that you have to adjust. So if we were to be doing a walkthrough and come into your room, what might I see? And what could I expect to see or look forward to seeing if I stepped into your room?
What I would hope to see would it be well put together, like where it just looks beautiful, but probably typically what happens if there's a walkthrough is everything goes a different way. It's like Lucy in the chocolate factory and the chocolate is flying every which way. And it's the one time that you're like, come on guys, get it together. And you got the one kid cussing at you and you got this one over here.
Messing up the bulletin board.
Yeah, tearing it up, and I'm having to pretend like I don't care, even though I'm really mad. And you might see that my neck is like a thermostat, and it's outwardly showing what I'm feeling inwardly. And the more I'm trying to look put together, the more I realize that I can't. What is it going to look like? I don't know. It always looks different. There are times that it flows beautifully, and it comes together like a puzzle, and you just find the pieces. And sometimes it comes together like a puzzle that I swear they put 4 different puzzles in the box and you just can't simply find the pieces and they won't match up. And I think it's just a dirty trick. They do that on purpose. It's like, I don't know, are you both mothers?
Yes.
Okay. It's like,
I have that puzzle at home.
it reminds me of when they're little and they first learn a word and they've said it all day to you in front of you and you're so excited and your husband finally gets home and you're going to show off their new trick and they just drooling, with like, dirty diaper or whatever, and they pretend as if they don't know. So what is it going to look like? I'm not sure, but what I have learned is that you will know my work by its fruits. What does an apple tree look like when you first plant it? It looks like a stick that's there. And one day it will grow leaves. And eventually, with a lot of tender and care, it will grow fruit. But what does it look like when you first put it in the ground? It just looks like a stick. And we have to remind ourselves that it's not based on what it looks like. And even if my walkthrough evaluation doesn't look good, it's not based on that. You're not seeing the day to day. And if I am doing my job properly and correctly, it's gonna look different because you're gonna know. You're gonna know we're in the assemblies, we're walking the halls, we're greeting other teachers, we're immersing students, and we're overcoming big things. And so it's gonna look like a battle that all of our life does. Every day we're faced with trials.
Good. Well, it's very important to us that we're in the classroom and that we are available and we're performing those walkthroughs on a regular basis. So we're not going to be making a large snapshot decision out of what we saw from one day. So trust that we understand that. And many of our days take different turns too from what we have put in the plans, right?
Absolutely.
And scheduled in the books. So
Absolutely.
We understand that need to pivot. Sometimes you have to cook that casserole in something besides the oven, right?
That's right.
So
Sometimes you just pick up the casserole.
there you go.
Yeah.
You just bring it home and let somebody else do it.
That is right. Did you have any other questions?
Maybe just a couple, how much time, are we good on time, if I can?
Yes, we have about 13
Okay.
minutes left.
Just making sure before I opened up new cans. Okay, so I'm wondering, you have kind of pointed out some areas maybe where, you know, you're hoping it works, and maybe it doesn't, but I mean, is there a specific area of weakness that you found yourself in the past where maybe you felt like you could have gotten a bit more support from administration, from you know, from your community? And I know you've kind of talked about the immersion and things that have happened there, but is there something that's kind of on your mind that maybe how we as your community could have stepped in and supported you a little bit better?
Definitely, definitely.
We only got 13 minutes.
So that's probably even what is enticing about coming here is because I hear how strong your SPED community is and that network system. It's hard to be the Lone Ranger at times. It's hard to be the one in the trenches and just like, okay, here we keep going, you know. Little things of like pick yourself up by the bootstraps and just keep going. At some point you burn out. I don't want to burn out. I still have passion for my population. I love what I do. I love my population of people. So areas that I would say, if you're asking for a weakness, something that
maybe you've experienced in the past. An area of weakness that we could have stepped in and shown you a bit more.
I am a doer.
Mhm.
I am a doer. And although that very attribute in me can be is a strength, it can also be a weakness. And if there is something that needs to be done, I'm gonna do it. Sometimes to a fault, and support could even be someone from the outside recognizing that, hey, you're at max capacity right now. You know, maybe you don't need to be on the sunshine committee of once a month making a birthday treat for somebody because you've kind of got a lot going on. If it's asked of me, I'm gonna do it. So sometimes a weakness is I don't see that I need to come up for air and ask for help. Another area, like if we're just being boldly honest, is I have, you know, yes, 12 years of educational experience, but primarily the last part has been in high school and secondary junior high. So an area that I could see being a struggle is just remembering that they're little.
That's good.
Just even just that reminder of like, hey, they're just babies.
No, I totally understand that. And so I had this one here.
Mhm.
So can you tell us about maybe a challenge that you faced that you had to overcome specifically?
In my classroom,
Sure.
probably.
Unless it is about the casserole.
Well, I've had to overcome a few of those too. If you leave it in the oven too long, the cheese can burn. And you don't throw that joker away, you just cut off the cheese and you sprinkle on some
I'm
more.
gonna write that down. Cut the cheese.
Cut the cheese, and it has a different meaning, sorry. That's another challenge I have to overcome. Well, I guess we're gonna go with that, we're gonna tie it yours too.
Okay.
They say there's no room for sarcasm in the classroom. If it wasn't for sarcasm, my own children would not know I love you. It just transfers over. I feel like it's very important to speak to even special ed students like people. And they love it, and they talk back to you in the same snarky way. You better be able to, if you're gonna dish it out, you better be able to take it. So that has been a challenge.
And that may be something you'll have to tame down and going from secondary down to elementary.
That's gonna be a challenge. That's what I mean, is having to remember what's funny at 17 is not at 7. Right. Because we're just not there. We're real literal still. Oof.
Yes, they.
But most notably, the biggest challenge in my career has been one student who he identifies and receives services as ID on the spectrum, and is in the process of getting was in the process of getting a mental health diagnosis. We realized that he had associative multiple personality disorders. And so when we want to talk about a morning of a cussing student, angry, none of my tools in my toolbox worked. Mental health is a real thing. And when you realize it when it is a chemical imbalancement, this was a student who was fixated on weapons, saw things that you and I do not see, spoke of them in different ways, got to where, so at high school, we have bell to bell. So I like to, for community culture and exposure, and just a reset for myself, when the bell rings, we do what's called a walkabout, and the kids just get to walk around the halls and they come back. It seemed that in those loud settings and environments, it would agitate things. He would make sounds. He would key up a device on his hand that no one saw, almost like a transformer.
Oh, goodness.
He would talk about an evil twin that lived within inside him. And he thought that he was a soldier of the Lord, and was ready to protect our school. However, there were certain people that were not on his side and on his team. There were times that he and I were very close, and there were times that he would want to come very combative towards me. So that we had to come up with an entire, not just a behavior intervention plan. It went full FBA. It went further than that. The co-op had to have their behavior intervention specialists come into play. Lots of documenting, lots of hard work, and a referral that I worked countless hours on, and our school provided the cost of getting his full behavior health done, and we got him connected with a psychiatrist, to which he was able to receive medication.
And you remain involved throughout the process as well?
So I had actually the option of him being removed from the classroom because it became a safety threat, because he did have access to weapons. So as an admin team with the superintendent, with our co-op coordinator, special ed coordinator, the principals, we all collected, and with the psychiatrist who Zoomed with us, we all came together and created a safety care plan. And they bent over backwards, our district, that I will say kudos to them on this one, bent over backwards to be able to keep his placement here. So the biggest thing was he was no longer allowed to have a backpack transferring to and from. And his big thing of transferring the backpack was his Chromebook. Because he did not have a device, and once he got home, he got to play his games or watch his videos. So we came up with an alternative plan, and at first IT did not like the idea of him having two devices, but our superintendent was gracious enough to say, like, this is a safety issue, and so he had a Chromebook at school and one at home, and so there was, within our classroom, we don't send home homework, so there was truly, other than him appearing as a peer, there was no need for a backpack. So we tried to mitigate any of those obstacles, and honestly, to be able to keep the entire community safe at the same time, and to extinguish as many measures as we could.
Wow.
So that was definitely a challenge, but also with that high level of stress, can induce burnout. So I think
I would say that is a challenge.
the reminder of the littles, but also the excitement of, like, kind of, let's get back down to, wow, let's have circle time and sing songs.
Well, you have certainly highlighted on how you have been able to be successful in championing for all of your students. And it sounds like you are quite the asset to our campus. So I think Candace may have one last question for you, and I have a final question to wrap this up.
I do. I was hoping that you might, speaking of community, maybe about how you've had a difficult colleague in the past and how you were able to overcome that.
In the past, present, and future. You're gonna always have that difficult colleague, and that's the one that never calls in. They're there every day, and they're in your face, and they want to be your friend or your enemy. I think it goes back to the same philosophy with children, is that you have to create a connection in the culture. I'm very transparent that this is me, and you're gonna see the same me here. Well, other than this beverage might be different than what you would see at home, but this is me, real. I think with trying to build relationships with people and making those connections with hearts, it helps. But there's also some that you're not gonna be able to please all. And there has to be a recognition of that and an understanding of that. We don't have to get along. We don't have to be friends. You don't have to come to my back porch. But here at work, we will treat each other with respect, no matter what our beliefs are, whether they be political or educational or spiritual. I have to respect you as a person. And boldly, I would demand the same. So I feel like you train people how to treat you.
That's good.
And be willing to have bold, hard conversations, especially in the role that you have paras underneath you. Those are hard ones. Because look, we're not here to babysit. You're not here to check up on your Twitter feed or whatever it is that you think that you're going to get to do from your phone. So those are hard talks. Just like you have to train your students, you have to train the people under you of what your expectations are and model the same. I would not do that, be on my phone. So model what I want.
That is great.
Good answer.
I feel like we've really gotten a great picture of who you are. So one last question that I have for you is, if you could describe yourself in one word with no context, could you share with us what that one word would be?
Ooh.
With no context.
No context.
Okay. Casserole.
I like that one.
I like that too, and I think I'm pretty hungry by now. How about you, Candy?
Like it.
Well,
I'm gonna have to get the recipe for the fajita casserole.
Okay, but it changes.
I just understand.
well, thank you, Ms. Smith, for your time.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
do want to know before we end our time here today, do you have any questions for us, or would you like a tour of the campus?
Well, I'd like to see my room and just hope that there's a window.
Listen to her speaking like it's her room.
Yeah.
Positive self-talk, right? So is there anything else you would like to hear about us that we could answer for you? Do you have any burning questions?
No, I don't, not that I'm sure I'm gonna get in my car. You know how this goes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get in my car, I'm gonna pull away, and I'm gonna be like, I should have asked those 3 questions.
Okay.
Or the lunch is good. Like, I don't care.
I don't think they serve any
No
casseroles.
casseroles.
No salt. Yeah. Okay. No, ma'am. I didn't.
Well, we sure thank you for your time today, and I appreciate you coming in on such a short notice in this heat.
Yes,
Thank
it
you.
was a pleasure. Thank you so
Yes,
much for.
we would love to walk you down the
Yes,
halls
I
and
would
give
love
you a
that.
tour so that you could see what it would, envision what it's like with kids here when it's not the summer.
I would love that. Thank you guys.
Of course.
Appreciate your time.
Wait, are we good on time?
So good to
Okay.
meet you.
We'll go over.
We'll go
Okay.
over all the
We can go
time.
over.